Sometimes in certain crimes, the perpetrator is confident that they will escape punishment. Those around them are also sure that the crime will go unsolved. However, as surprising as it may sound, only one small detail, obtained by the police through a deceased person, can unravel the perfect crime. The story begins in the city of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, with a girl named Michelle Martinko. Michelle was born on October 6, 1961. For her parents, Albert and Janet Martinko, Michelle's birth was a real miracle. For the previous 12 years, they had been unsuccessfully trying to conceive a child. During this time, Michelle's mother had 5 miscarriages, and only at the age of 44, she was able to give birth to her second child. That child was Michelle. Michelle and her older sister Janelle had a 12-year age difference, but that didn't prevent them from being close friends. They enjoyed playing cards, strolling in the park, going to fairs, and similar activities. At the age of 15, Michelle was diagnosed with scoliosis, and she was prescribed to wear a brace. This made her somewhat shy, as it made her feel different from others. However, by the age of 18, the need for the brace disappeared, and Michelle truly blossomed. She became a tall, beautiful girl with perfect long hair. By this time, she was involved in school theater, sang in the school choir, and was preparing to attend the University of Iowa to study interior design. On the evening of December 19, 1979, Michelle was at the school choir banquet. On that day, she wore a black fitted dress that only emphasized the beauty of the young girl. As the event came to an end, Michelle suggested to a friend to go to the recently opened Westdale Mall. Michelle wanted to buy a winter coat there, but her friend had things to do at home. So Michelle had to go alone to the mall. On that day, the mall was open until 10 p.m. However, by 2 a.m., Michelle was still not home. At that point, her parents realized they couldn't wait any longer. They filed a missing person report. Around 5 in the morning, a patrol officer discovered a green Buick car in the mall parking lot. The lone-standing car alerted the patrol officer. There was frost on its windows. After clearing it a bit, the patrol officers saw the silhouette of a woman on the front seat of the car. Initially, the patrol officers thought there was a drunk woman inside. However, upon opening the car, he saw splatters of blood everywhere and the body of the girl. The body belonged to 18-year-old Michelle Martinko. The crime scene was horrific and chaotic. There was blood all over the car, as well as rabbit fur. The fur was obviously from the jacket Michelle was wearing that evening. In total, the girl had 29 wounds, with 11 of them on her face. Police were not sure if the girl was stabbed with a knife. The report only contained a general phrase, an injury from a sharp object. However, the girl likely died from these wounds, most likely from the chest injury. The girl had cuts on her hands, indicating that she tried to defend herself from the attacker. However, as we already understand, it was unsuccessful. Importantly, the blood was only inside the car. There was not a drop outside the car, indicating that the attack occurred after Michelle had already entered the car. No fingerprints were found inside, but imprints of a relief similar to the relief of rubber gloves were discovered. Obviously, the attacker wore them. The girl's jewelry, as well as $200 in cash, which she planned to spend on a coat, were untouched. This ruled out the motive of robbery. So what else could it be? A young, beautiful girl. Obviously, the second assumption was rape. However, the girl was fully clothed. The medical examination also dismissed this motive. This made the crime wildly unusual. The fact that the attacker wore gloves indicated that it was not a spontaneous attack. The assailant was preparing for it. and the wounds inflicted on Michelle's face made the police think that this murder was something personal. However, that was the end of it. There was nothing to move forward with. At this stage, work with potential witnesses began. There was nothing unusual that evening. Inside the mall, Michelle crossed paths with several acquaintances. None of them could describe Michelle's behavior as unusual. Everything was quite ordinary. However, when talking to friends, one name kept coming up. It was the name of Andy Seidel. He was Michelle's ex-boyfriend, with whom she had been in a relationship for about 2 years. They had recently broken up, just a few weeks before the girl's death. And they broke up on her initiative. However, the problem was that it couldn't be said that Andy accepted this breakup. Many said that he was still very jealous of the girl, still wanted to know where and with whom she spent time. Moreover, suspicions were added by the fact that on that evening he was seen in the same mall where Michelle was killed. Furthermore, some even saw him talking to Michelle that evening. The guy didn't deny it. He said he was at the mall to buy a couple of Christmas gifts. And he ran into Michelle there completely by chance. In addition, the guy had an alibi. His mother reported that he was home around 8 p.m. Michelle, according to the police, was killed between 9 and 10 p.m. But could this alibi be considered sufficient? After all, a mother might say anything to protect her son from trouble. Michelle's family was convinced of Andy's guilt. The police were also sure of it. Many interrogations were aimed at breaking Andy, making him confess. However, he never did, and the police had no physical evidence against him, so they had to let him go. But suspicions did not disappear. At the girl's funeral, the guy screamed hysterically at her coffin. "I want to know who she loved before she died, me or Mike." Mike is the guy for whom, according to Andy, Michelle left him. Mike, unlike Andy, was not a suspect because, on the night of Michelle's murder, he was in Milwaukee, 350 kilometers from the girl's place of death. 6 months after the murder, the police released a composite sketch of the suspect. During this time, more than 100 people were interviewed. Some were hypnotized, some took lie detector tests, but nothing was achieved except for the portrait of the person seen in the parking lot that evening. A reward of $10,000 was announced for help in finding Michelle's killer, but soon all leads led to a dead end, and the case became a so-called cold case. In the mid-90s, still not knowing who was guilty of their daughter's death, Michelle's parents died, although they were convinced they knew the name of the perpetrator. For them, it was always Andy Seidel. In 2005, 26 years after the murder, in a case when no one was expecting it, a new lead emerged. Detective Doug Larson, working on cold cases, re-examined the evidence from the crime scene. He discovered that the blood at the crime scene did not belong only to Michelle. At least 2 bloodstains were not hers. One was on the gear shift, and the second on Michelle's dress. Moreover, the DNA of these 2 stains matched, meaning they belonged to the same person. Obviously, this person was responsible for the attack on Michelle, and the credit for finding these stains belonged entirely to the murdered Michelle. Without a doubt, these stains appeared only because she resisted the attacker and wounded him in the process. Thus, the DNA found at the crime scene was uploaded to the U.S. National Database. This meant that if the sought-after person ever had problems with the law, his DNA was in the police database. Over 26 years, Michelle Martinko's killer could easily have come into contact with the police, so matches could be expected. But no, there was no DNA in the database similar to the DNA of the person who attacked Michelle. However, now the police had what they didn't have before, the DNA of the killer. The detective then tried the process of elimination. A sample was taken from anyone who could be somehow connected to this attack, including Andy Seidel. However, there was no match. And for these 26 years, people were convinced that Seidel was the murderer. So the case returned to the police shelves once again. There, it lay for another long 12 years. In 2017, the case fell into the hands of Detective Matt Dillinger. At this stage, you start to marvel at what technology can do in our time. Dillinger turned to the company Parabon Nanolabs. This company specializes in DNA phenotyping. So, having only a person's DNA, and in this case, just a drop of blood, the company could predict his appearance with a high degree of accuracy. It sounds like fiction, but it's a reality. This is how the criminal supposedly looked when the attack occurred. The company suggested that it was a white male, approximately 25 years old, with blue eyes and light hair. By publishing this portrait, the police received hundreds of tips. In principle, any man with blue eyes and light hair in Iowa seemed suspicious. However, unfortunately, at this stage, this portrait did not help. Then Detective Dillinger decided to try something else. In the USA, there is a website called JetMatch. It is designed for those looking for relatives. The essence of the site's work is that people voluntarily upload their DNA there. And in this way, you can find a match on the site and consequently, a biological relative. So, Detective Dillinger uploaded the DNA of Michelle Martinko's killer to this site. Thus, a connection was found between the DNA of the killer and the DNA of a woman named Brandy Jennings. With the help of the aforementioned campaign Parabon Nanolabs, it was possible to find out that, judging by the DNA, the woman found in the database is the half-sister of the killer. To find the killer himself, it was possible to create a family tree of Brandy Jennings. As a result, the list of suspects was narrowed down to 3 brothers: Kenneth Byrne, Jerry Byrne, and Donald Byrne. Now, almost 40 years later, the detective was incredibly close to catching Michelle Martinko's killer. In secret, the police collected the DNA of each of the brothers. It all started with the middle brother, Kenneth. By this time, he was living in Manchester, 60 kilometers from the city where Michelle was killed. The police observed him at the golf club. There, they obtained a straw from a drink that Kenneth threw away. It was sent to the laboratory. There were no matches. Next was Donald, the older brother. He lived in Davenport, more than 100 kilometers from Michelle's murder site. In his trash bag, the police found a toothbrush. There was no DNA match. The last was the youngest brother, Jerry. On October 29, 2018, the police picked up a discarded plastic straw from Jerry Byrne. And it was the one. There was a match. Jerry Byrne was born in 1953. Most of his life, he lived in Manchester, 60 kilometers from the city where Michelle Martinko lived. In 1979, when she was killed, Jerry was 25 years old, and he looked like this. And now look at the composite sketch made based on just one drop of his blood. As amazing as it may sound, the age matched completely, and the appearance looks very similar. At the time of Michelle Martinko's murder, Jerry was married and had 2 children. By 2018, when the DNA match was discovered, Jerry was 65 years old. He was the owner of a powder coating company. In his past, there were 2 incidents that now raised a little concern. His first wife, Patricia, died in 2009. It is believed that she committed suicide. And in 2013, Jerry's cousin disappeared without a trace and was never found. However, Jerry Byrne could not be linked to these cases, but he could be linked to Michelle Martinko. On December 19, 2018, exactly 39 years after Michelle Martinko's murder, Detective Dillinger went to Jerry Burns' company with a hidden camera. "Hi, how are you?" "Jerry, my name is Matt." "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you too. I'm from the police department." "This is JD. Can we quickly talk to you about a case we're currently working on?" "Sure. We're currently reopening an old case. I don't know if you heard about it in the news. It's the murder that happened at Westdale Mall. Michelle Martinko's case. Have you heard?" "Yes." "Good. Have you read about it in the newspapers or anything like that?" "A long time ago." "A long time, huh? By the way, I'll leave you my business card. What have you heard about it? What do you remember?" "It was a big case." "A big case. Do you remember what happened?" "Not really." "And do you remember who the victim was or anything like that?" "Can't say. There was an article in the newspaper recently that mentioned we have some new leads. People were calling in with tips about this case. And, in short, your name came up." Strange." "Yeah." Next, the detective showed Jerry a composite sketch of the suspect, along with a photo of Jerry himself. "These pictures are strange." "I know. Do I look like this?" "Well, I think it's a bit similar." "Do you only have these photos?" "Just these 3? "Yes." "Oh, you'd know better than us how you looked in '79. But I don't think I ever looked like that. If that was me, I'd be a handsome guy." Afterward, Jerry was asked to provide a DNA sample. However, he refused. Then they showed him a warrant requiring him to do so. "Coming in here, I kind of knew there would be a match." "Really?" "Yeah." "And why is that?" "The truth is, we're not here for no reason. We're here to confirm what we already know. I've already collected samples of your DNA that you discarded before. And I'm telling you, Jerry, I know your DNA will match the DNA attached to the case. From what I discarded." "Jerry, how did your DNA end up at the crime scene?" "I don't know." "Check if it's mine." No, we've already checked." "How did it end up there, Jerry?" "I don't know." "What happened that night?" "Let's wait for the test results." "I don't think you did them." "We did." "I don't think so." "Okay. Jerry, did you kill someone that night?" "Do the test." "Jerry, do the DNA test." "Why did this happen, Jerry?" "Do the test." "What happened?" "I don't know. I wasn't there that night." "We know you were there, and the question is, we're not sure yet. First, prove I was there at all." "I don't think that's a problem." "Okay." Throughout the conversation, which lasted about an hour, despite the serious accusations, Jerry remained calm. However, it's interesting to note one thing. Yes, he didn't confess to the murder, but he never once said something like, "I didn't kill her." His answers were always vague, like "I don't know" or "I don't remember." Immediately after this conversation, Jerry was arrested. In the police car, an interesting dialogue also took place between the detective and Jerry. "Do you think it's possible that you did it but don't remember? Can we conclude that?" "I don't know. I think something like. I wonder if something could have happened, something like a blackout. I think something like that could happen if you were disconnecting." I said I was blocked. "What does that mean?" "Blocked." "So, you were knocked out?" "I didn't say knocked out, I said blocked." I was talking about things that could be blocked in memory. Ah, I see, you're talking about blocked memories. As part of the investigation, Jerry Burns' computer was examined. He spent hours on the internet looking at very sensitive topics: strangulation, stabbing, attacks on girls, exclusively on blondes. This, of course, was not the main thing. The main thing was that his blood was found in Michelle Martinko's car. As a result, Jerry Burns' trial took place in 2020. The motive was considered an attempted rape. However, probably, Jerry did not expect that Michelle would resist so strongly, so he could not rape her before the murder. The main evidence, as mentioned earlier, was Jerry's blood found on the gearshift handle and, more importantly, on the dress of the victim. Jerry Burns was sentenced to life imprisonment as a result of the trial. So, almost 40 years later, Michelle Martinko's case came to a logical conclusion. Finally, it is worth noting one interesting fact. Over 40 years, 3 investigators worked on Michelle Martinko's case. The first was Mike Dillinger, the second was Doug Larison, and the third was Matthew Dillinger. The first and the last were father and son. Thus, the father started working on this case, and the son brought it to an end. That's the story of Michelle Martinko.